What if I told you that the source of your deepest suffering is not your trauma, not your parents, not your job, not even the chaos in the world around you, but something far more terrifying? What if your pain is rooted in the death of something you didn't even know was holding you together? Something so deeply embedded in your psyche that its collapse has left you spiritually naked. That's what Nietzsche meant when he said, "God is dead." And no, he didn't mean it as a celebration or a declaration of atheism. He meant it as a diagnosis, a crisis, a profound existential unraveling that we are still living through today.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
You've probably felt it, that drifting sense of meaninglessness, that quiet despair that creeps in late at night, that feeling that nothing is truly sacred anymore, that no one really knows what the point is, that we're all just playing roles, chasing money, status, comfort, while silently wondering what it's all for. That's not just depression. That's not just burnout. That's the echo of God's death reverberating through your soul. Because when Nietzsche said God is dead, he didn't mean a literal deity had died. He meant that the collective belief in a higher meaning, in an ultimate truth, in a moral order ordained from above had collapsed. And we are left with the ruins. You might not have grown up religious. You might not believe in God at all. But that doesn't mean you're not suffering the consequences of his death. Because what died wasn't just a theological figure, it was a framework, a structure, a story that gave life meaning. For thousands of years, humans looked up and saw purpose. They saw morality written in the stars. They believed their suffering had meaning, that their actions mattered in the eyes of something bigger. And then slowly that belief eroded. Science rose, institutions fell. The sacred became absurd. And we were left with freedom, terrifying, paralyzing freedom. What do you do when no one tells you who you are anymore? What do you do when the commandments are gone and the rules are up to you? What do you do when you realize that life doesn't come with an instruction manual, and worse, that maybe it never did? That's where the suffering begins. Not because freedom is bad, but because most of us aren't ready for it. We crave certainty. We want someone to tell us we're doing it right. We want a scoreboard, a God, a rule book. But Nietzsche said no. That time is over. Now, you must become the author of your own life. You must create your own values. You must bear the unbearable weight of your own freedom. And most people can't. Most people won't. So what do we do instead? We numb ourselves. We distract. We scroll. We chase shallow pleasure. We cling to ideologies. We worship fame, money, algorithms, influencers, anything that gives us the illusion of purpose. But deep down, we know it's hollow. We know it's not enough. And that's the suffering Nietzsche saw coming. Not war, not hunger, but an existential vacuum. A silent apocalypse of meaning. Have you felt it? That moment when you achieve what you thought would make you happy and you still feel empty. That moment when you're surrounded by people but feel utterly alone. That moment when you look in the mirror and realize you don't even know who you are anymore. That's the void. That's what Nietzsche meant. God is dead, and now it's on you. You are the creator now. You are the God now. And that is both the greatest burden and the greatest opportunity you've ever faced. But here's the twist. Most people don't want that responsibility. They'd rather be told what to do. They'd rather obey than create. Because creating is terrifying. It means facing the abyss. It means admitting that no one is coming to save you. It means realizing that the meaning of your life isn't hidden in a book, or a church, or a guru. It's waiting inside you, raw and unformed, begging to be sculpted. But to reach it, you must go through the fire. You must kill your illusions. You must die before you die. Nietzsche called this process the path of the Übermensch, the overman. Not a superior human in the sense of domination, but a transcendent human. One who has overcome the death of God by becoming a creator of values. One who no longer borrows meaning from others, but generates it from within. Imagine what that would look like. A life where your actions are not dictated by fear or guilt or tradition, but by your own deepest convictions. A life where your suffering is not meaningless, but sacred. Where your struggle is not punishment, but transformation. But let's be honest, it's easier to avoid that path. It's easier to conform, to mimic, to obey. That's why Nietzsche said most people would become the last man, being a creature of comfort, a being who avoids pain, avoids risk, avoids greatness. The last man doesn't create, he consumes. He doesn't believe, he distracts. He doesn't suffer well, he numbs. And the world is full of last men, comfortable, entertained, medicated, but hollow. Is that who you want to be? So here's the question. If God is dead, what do you worship now? Don't say nothing. Because even atheists worship. We all worship. The only question is what? What do you organize your life around? What do you sacrifice for? What would you die for? That's your God. And if it's hollow, your life will be hollow. If it's shallow, your soul will wither. If it's unconscious, your suffering will be unbearable. But if you choose it consciously, if you create meaning with your eyes open, then the suffering becomes sacred. And here's the paradox, you must suffer. There's no escaping it. Nietzsche didn't promise happiness. He promised struggle, but he also promised depth, meaning, becoming. The kind of life that breaks you open, strips you bare, and rebuilds you into something real, something worthy, something divine. Not because a God gave it to you, but because you forged it in the fire of your own becoming. And that's where most people turn back. They want the joy without the pain, the meaning without the responsibility, the identity without the sacrifice. But you can't skip the crucifixion. You must die to who you were to become who you are. You must face the void and create. Not once, every day, every hour. That's the price of freedom. That's the burden of a godless world. But it's also the gift, because now, finally, you are free. Free to choose, free to fail, free to rise, free to become the kind of person who doesn't need a God to be good, who doesn't need a heaven to live with purpose, who doesn't need a savior to walk the path. That's the Übermensch. That's the one who rises from the ashes of a dead God and says, I will create something more beautiful than fear ever allowed. So ask yourself this, what are you building with your freedom? What are you creating with your suffering? Are you numbing it, or are you transforming it? Are you running from death, or are you using it to live more fully? Because God may be dead, but you are alive. And that means something, if you let it. If you're still here, it means something in you is already shifting. You're not just watching a video. You're confronting the abyss. You're staring into the dark corners of your own soul and asking the question most people spend their entire lives avoiding: what now? Now that the old gods are gone. Now that the illusions have crumbled. Now that the stories no longer hold. What do you do with this terrifying freedom? What do you do when all the scaffolding of inherited meaning has collapsed under your feet and you're just standing there, weightless? Nietzsche believed that once God was dead, we entered a spiritual crisis unlike anything humanity had faced before. Not because we lost something external, but because we lost the compass that guided everything internal. Morality, purpose, identity. These weren't just religious ideas, they were existential anchors. And when those anchors vanished, we drifted. You're drifting now, even if you don't realize it. That sense of restlessness, of anxiety, of vague discontent. That's not just modern life. That's the consequence of unmoored existence. And here's the trap. When we lose real meaning, we don't become free, we become desperate. We start filling the void with anything that shouts loud enough to distract us. Ideologies, political tribes, consumer identities, addictions, fake spirituality, superficial self-help. We try to patch the hole in our soul with temporary fixes. But it never works. Because the problem is not that we lack stimulation. The problem is that we lack foundation. And you can't fake foundation. You either build it or you collapse. This is why Nietzsche was feared. He didn't offer easy answers. He didn't tell us what to believe. He handed us a mirror and said, look at your life. Look at your beliefs. Look at your behavior. Are you living someone else's values? Are you mimicking someone else's truth? Are you hiding behind comfort because you're afraid of becoming who you could be? That's a brutal question, but if you don't ask it, your suffering will remain unconscious. And unconscious suffering is the most dangerous kind because it rules you from the shadows. It drives your choices, poisons your relationships, sabotages your dreams. But conscious suffering? That's different. That's sacred. That's the path to transformation. Nietzsche knew this. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But here's the catch. You have to create the why. It won't be given to you. Not anymore. Not in this post-God world. You have to look at your suffering and ask, what is it trying to teach me? Not in a victimized way, but in a warrior's way. What is the lesson hidden in this pain? What truth is this agony trying to bring to the surface? Think about your own life. The moments that broke you, the betrayals, the losses, the failures. You didn't choose them, but they shaped you, or at least they had the power to. The question is, did you let them? Or did you run? Did you numb it with distractions? Did you bury it in busyness? Or did you stop and say, "This is the fire and I will walk through it with my eyes open"? That's what Nietzsche demanded. Not avoidance, not denial, but confrontation. Radical, fearless confrontation. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. The death of God didn't just remove comfort. It removed excuses. You can no longer blame God, fate, karma, or destiny. You can't say, it's in God's hands, or there's a divine plan, or everything happens for a reason. Now, the reason is you. The plan is you. The meaning is you, and that is terrifying because it means you are responsible for your own life. Fully, completely, no safety nets, no divine insurance, just you and the choices you make. But there's a beauty in that terror, because it means you are also free to become something extraordinary, free to write a story that has never been written before, free to live a life that's not just a reaction, but a creation. That's what Nietzsche meant by becoming who you are. Not discovering a pre-written destiny, but forging a self through the fire of existence, through trial, through suffering, through relentless self-honesty. And here's where most people stop, because it's too much. It's easier to be told what to do. It's easier to follow a path than to create one. But those who step into that burning void, they become something else, something rare, something dangerous. They become truly alive, not safe, not comfortable, but alive, awake, aware. They stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what must I create? So ask yourself, what are you creating right now? In your choices, in your thoughts, in your habits? Are you building a life that's truly yours? Or are you just decorating a prison someone else built for you? Are you living as a creator or as a consumer of borrowed beliefs? These are not questions to answer once. These are questions to live, to wake up with, to wrestle with. Because the moment you stop asking them, you slide back into the sleep of the last man. Numb, passive, comfortable, dead while alive. Nietzsche warned us, if we don't become creators, we will become slaves. Slaves to ideology, slaves to routine, slaves to comfort, slaves to the opinions of others. And the chains won't be visible. They'll be psychological, emotional, internal. You'll think you're free, but you'll be living someone else's life. And you'll wonder why your soul feels hollow, why joy is fleeting, why nothing truly satisfies. That's the cost of avoiding the void. But the reward for facing it, it's everything. It's meaning, not inherited, but earned, not believed, but built. You become someone who doesn't need external validation, someone who doesn't need applause to feel worthy, someone who doesn't fear suffering, because suffering is no longer the enemy. It's the crucible, the forge, the place where your real self is born. You stop asking, why is life so hard? And start asking, what is this difficulty trying to awaken in me? Nietzsche wasn't trying to destroy hope. He was trying to purify it, to burn away the false hope of divine rescue and replace it with the real hope of self-overcoming. And that's the ultimate message. No one is coming. Not God, not fate, not a savior. You are the miracle you've been waiting for. You are the answer to your own prayer. But only if you're willing to die to who you've been and rise into who you were meant to become. So now we return to the beginning. God is dead, and that's the source of your suffering. But it's also the seed of your liberation. Because now, finally, you can live a life that's not borrowed, not inherited, not programmed, but chosen, created, forged. That's the truth most people run from, but not you. You're still here, and that means you're ready to face the void, ready to suffer consciously, ready to create meaning with your own hands. If you've made it this far, you've already done something most will never do. You didn't flinch. You didn't click away. You didn't look for a prettier answer. You stayed. And that means you're no longer running from the truth. You're running toward it. But now comes the hardest part, not just understanding Nietzsche's existential truth, but living it, integrating it, breathing it in and letting it burn away every excuse, every illusion, every crutch you've used to avoid responsibility for your own existence. Because the death of God isn't just philosophical. It's personal. It's a funeral for every lie you've clung to about who you are and what life is supposed to be. It's the collapse of the fantasy that someone, somewhere, is keeping score. That suffering has a built-in reward. That if you just follow the rules, life will make sense. It's the death of the idea that there's a cosmic parent watching, guiding, approving. And in that wreckage, something is born. A question. The most dangerous question you can ask, what now? Most people never answer it. They distract themselves until the end. They cling to borrowed identities. They seek comfort in crowds. They hide behind systems, doctrines, movements. But you're standing in the rubble, and that's where true life begins. Because when everything you thought you were is gone, you're finally free to become. Not reactively, not rebelliously, but deliberately, authentically, creatively. This is where Nietzsche's vision of the Übermensch becomes more than a concept, it becomes a call. The one who rises after the death of God isn't a nihilist. They don't drown in despair. They don't surrender to the meaninglessness. They look it in the eye. They walk into the abyss and say, I will bring light here. That's what it means to create values. To say, even if nothing matters inherently, I will make something that does. Even if the universe is silent, I will sing. But don't mistake this for romanticism. It's not poetic. It's brutal. It means taking your pain and using it as fuel. It means looking at your suffering not as punishment, not as injustice, but as raw material. Every wound, every heartbreak, every failure, it's all clay. You either shape it into something beautiful or it decays into bitterness. That's the choice you face every day. Creation or collapse, awakening or avoidance. And here's where the practical side of Nietzsche's philosophy kicks in. Because this isn't just about thought, it's about action. What does it mean to live as if God is dead and you are the creator of your own values? It means you stop waiting for permission. You stop seeking validation. You stop comparing your path to others. You wake up each day and ask, what do I stand for? What do I build? What kind of person am I becoming, not in theory, but in practice? It means you take your suffering seriously, but not personally. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? You start turning your pain into projects, your confusion into inquiry, your loneliness into empathy. You start carving meaning where there was none. And you do it not to impress anyone, but because your soul demands it. Because you can't go back to sleep. Not now. Not after seeing the truth. You also stop outsourcing your morality. You stop living by default. You stop following rules you never questioned. You stop pretending that being good is just about obedience. Nietzsche hated that. He saw it as spiritual cowardice. Real morality, he said, doesn't come from fear of punishment or hope for reward. It comes from strength, from depth, from the courage to say, this is right because I have looked into the deepest part of myself and I have chosen it. Think about how rare that is. How many people do you know who live like that? Who think for themselves not just politically or socially, but existentially? Most people parrot what they've been told. They live in inherited paradigms. They fear stepping outside the lines. But the Übermensch draws new lines, not recklessly, not arrogantly, but because they've earned the right. They've suffered consciously. They've questioned everything. And from that void, they've built a self. But this isn't a solitary journey. That's another misunderstanding. Nietzsche wasn't saying you should isolate yourself in some mountaintop of superiority. He believed in connection but not codependence. He believed in community but not conformity. You're meant to live among others, not above them. But you must first become whole. Otherwise, your relationships are just a trade of neuroses. You lean on each other's brokenness and then wonder why it all falls apart. So heal not because it's trendy, but because it's necessary. Face your shadows not to fix them, but to integrate them. Own your chaos not to glorify it, but to transform it. This is the work, the real spiritual path. Not rituals, not dogmas, but radical self-authorship. The courage to say, I don't know what life is supposed to mean, but I will make it sacred anyway. And here's where the payoff comes. When you live like this, something shifts. It's subtle at first. You stop craving applause. You stop fearing silence. You stop needing to be right. You become grounded, rooted, unshakable. Because your meaning isn't fragile anymore. It's not borrowed. It's not conditional. It's yours, forged in fire. And that kind of meaning, it can withstand anything. Rejection, a failure, loss, even death. That's what Nietzsche really meant. Not that God is dead and we're doomed, but that God is dead and now we're free. Free to live lives that are not imitations, but expressions. Lives that are not performances, but works of art. Lives that don't wait for permission, but radiate with purpose. Not because someone told us what matters, but because we decided. So the final question is this: what will you decide? Will you be a last man, numbing yourself to the void? Or will you be a creator, rising from the ashes of dead gods with a fire of your own? Will you spend your life searching for meaning, or will you become the source of it? You already know the answer. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be here. So go, not with certainty, but with courage. Not with a map, but with a flame. Burn your own path. Write your own scripture. Become your own truth. Because God is dead and now It's your turn.